The Mariners are reportedly frontrunners to land Brendan Donovan in a trade with the Cardinals. But what if they don't get him, especially after already losing out on Jorge Polanco? We'll answer that and more coming up here on Mailbag Monday. Colby, hit it.
You are Locked On Mariners, your daily Seattle Mariners podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Ahoy, sailors. It is Monday, December 15th, 2025. You're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. My name is Tidy Gonzalez, and I'm joined as always by my co-host Colby Patnode. We're two lifelong Mariners fans who've been covering the team for over half a decade. And today we're going to open up the mailbag like we do here every Monday and answer some of your Mariners questions. But before we get into it, I want to shout out our title sponsor today, FanDuel. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. And just as a reminder, we are now officially in our 3-show-a-week portion of our schedule until February 2nd. So we will be posting episodes here on Locked On Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, and episodes of our Patreon show on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Obviously, if something breaks on a Tuesday or a Thursday or on the weekend, we will do a show that day, so long as our schedule allows for it. And so you won't have to wait. You don't have to worry about us waiting until Monday if something happens on a Saturday to talk about it. We will try and get that done ASAP. And then once February 2nd rolls back around, we will go back to 5 shows a week for the remainder of the year here on Locked On. All right, let's get into your questions here on Mailbag Monday. We're going to start with sad PNW sports fan here on Mailbag Monday. I'm feeling like after Polanco, it's Brendan Donovan, Ketel, Marte, or bust. What are some other options to get a bat at second or third base to make me feel all right about our chances to land a quality bat there? Just feels like a home run or a strikeout right now. Colby, I think any list here has to start with Brandon Lowe, right?
Yeah, pretty clearly the best of the, we'll call them backup plans, whatever you want to call them. Lowe is the guy that we've talked about a lot. We honestly don't know if the Mariners really like him all that much. He's been like a popular trade target of like anybody who's covered the team for the last 3 or 4 years now. But we've never actually heard that they've done work on him or that they've been all that interested. We heard that they liked Yandy Diaz. We heard that they liked Randy Arozarena. Like typically we hear things like this, and I don't know if they like Lowe or not, but you do have to get some kind of proven bat this winter. And so you might have to take a shot on a guy that you don't love, but maybe think is just okay. And Lowe, he's going to hit a lot of home runs, which you kind of need right now. You've lost a little bit of power this winter. You need the home runs, and Lowe's the guy who's going to give them to you. Even if he only plays, 120 games, he's probably going to hit 25 to 30 home runs, which is something you really need. So yeah, Lowe's the number one. When you move past Lowe, I think, you look at a guy like Jake Cronenworth, who some people really don't like, which is weird because he's a pretty good player. He's not an all-star or anything, but he's a pretty good player. Yeah. Jeff McNeil is another guy who is kind of like a poor man's Donovan. He's going to cost twice as much money and is not quite as good and a little bit more floor there. I mean, Donovan has such a high floor, and McNeil, he was pretty good this year, but he was pretty mid the 2 years before that. So, but you only get him for a year, which might be more to the Mariners' speed because he's going to be cheaper to acquire monetarily. And again, he doesn't block anybody for the long term. So I think those are kind of the big three. I think Lowe is the number one of the backup plans. And then it's kind of Cronenworth. It's McNeil. If you want to go like a slot or like a couple tiers below that, it's Willi Castro and Luis Rengifo. And then if you want to go even below that, you can kind of go like, hey, let's just get Andy Ibáñez to be a platoon partner with Cole Young. And he usually hits lefties very well. And he's a good defender. He's a nice player that we can get pretty cheap. And then there's the trade route. I'm a fan of Edmundo Sosa, but he's kind of more of a platoon than he is an everyday guy. But he does a lot of really good things. You could go Alec Bohm. I would just throw him out there. I know people hate Alec Bohm, but whatever.
Look, to the person who asked this question's point, not a lot of confidence-inspiring options here after the first couple of names you listed.
Alec Bohm's a fine player. But Edmundo Sosa is a good player. Andy Ibáñez is a good player. They're role players. They're not like what?
Andy Ibáñez is a good player.
He's a good like role player.
He's a weak side platoon hitter.
Yeah, he's Dylan Moore, who's a fine player. So yeah. And then obviously there's bounce back guys like Willi Castro and Rengifo. So I don't think the Mariners are going to get left without a chair when the music stops. I don't think they're going to get left. Walter, I think they're going to get one of those three guys that we talked about. Maybe there's even somebody we haven't. Maybe the market on Gino crashes so much that he comes back, and that's a possibility.
I think now that Polanco's off the board, I think Gino's back on the menu for the Mariners.
Yeah, possibly. I think we're a couple weeks away from that being a real conversation, but because while the focus is on second base and DH, like fine, or second base and third base, that's fine. You're really looking for a primary DH. Like you want the bat, and if the bat plays second or third, that would be awesome. That's ideal.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, you might just have to get the best bat you can to replace because that's actually what you're replacing is the offensive production, not the position. So I think he cast a wider net than just second base, but we want to specifically look at guys who can play second or third, and then also DH a little bit. Allow others to DH, I guess. Lowe is kind of the number one in that regard. Once you take Marte and Donovan off the board, one name I'll throw out there, just so many different things would have to go in a very particular set of ways for this to make sense. But we know the Mariners really like Nico Horner. So, again, that probably requires the Cubs to sign, another infielder, and then the Mariners would have to figure out a deal with the Cubs, and the Cubs aren't going to, they already don't want to spend a lot of money this winter, and they're trying to win the World Series next year. Well, they're saying they're trying to win it, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, okay, well, do you want to give up 4 years of Gabe Spire for 1 year of Nico Horner? I don't know. Right. So again, I would say that one's highly unlikely, but just throw them out there. Just keep that name in the back of your head. And if the Cubs do go out and they do, sign Bregman or more likely somebody like Gino, then we can have a conversation about Nico Horner because it makes a lot more sense at that point. But I think you're looking at Lowe and then Cronenworth, McNeil as kind of like the three primary pivots for the Mariners. Yeah.
To your point earlier, though, it's pretty clear that the Mariners' approach to this is just we want the best bat that we can get. So if you're casting a wider net outside of just, second base, third base, then we're talking about Yandy Diaz. We're talking about Gino Suarez, maybe Alec Burleson, but if the Cardinals are, being what you feel is unreasonable about Brendan Donovan, they're probably going to be very unreasonable about Alec Burleson. So
Ivan Herrera.
Ivan Herrera. Yeah, there's some names. There's certainly some names that the Mariners can fall back on, but
he's currently being shopped.
I mean, he kind of got back on the horse in the second half of the season.
Sure.
So
and again, you're looking for a DH who can stand at third base if you need him to for a couple of weeks, and that's Vientos. So there are other options out there. It's just it's if you're specifically looking at second base, it's the five guys at the top. It's Donovan, Marte, Cronenworth, Lowe, McNeil, blah blah blah, and then there's then there's a big drop off after those guys. There's drop offs within those guys, but whatever. You guys get the point.
We will answer more of your questions here in just a moment, but first a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you once again by FanDuel. NFL Sundays move fast. One big play and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. Live betting is best when the game starts to shift, a receiver gets hot, a defense tightens up, or the momentum flips after a turnover. FanDuel lets you jump into the moment as live spreads and money lines adjust instantly and player props update as guys heat up. You can bet next touchdown scores, drive results, totals, and more. It keeps you locked into every snap, every drive, every possibility. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for making us your first listen for all things Mariners. And also thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. You already live your team every day. Now take it up a level and go ad free. Join the Everydayer Club today and get Locked On Mariners with no interruptions, members only Discord access, and more, all for just $5 a month or $50 a year. Go to lockedonmariners.supercast.com or check the link in the show notes to learn more. It's Mailbag Monday. Let's get back into your questions. And by the way, we have a lot of questions about Brendan Donovan, so get ready, Colby. JJ wants to know, they're either about Brendan Donovan or they are Brendan Donovan adjacent. So yeah. So JJ wants to know if we are to believe Ryan Divish's statement about the M's being interested in Donovan, even if Polanco resigns, could we see a scenario of acquiring both Brandon Lowe and Brendan Donovan? Brandon and Brennan.
Sure, that'll be fun.
Yeah.
I already get the Lows and the Lows mixed up.
Yeah.
So what's the other one I always get? There's one other tandem I always get mixed up. Anyways,
remember when you called Chris Bryant Chris Story and Trevor Story Trevor Bryant? Yeah, that was a fun one.
Yeah, I always get the Ahmad Rosario and the other guy that was traded in the
Andres Jimenez.
Yeah. Anyways, yeah, I think they should, because if you're willing to do that for Polo, you should be willing to do that because, again, the idea there was clearly okay, Polo's the DH and Donovan's the second baseman. Perfect. We got two bats, and our lineup is now one of the best in the American League, maybe baseball. Will they? I don't know, because the way Divish worded it, it sounds very much like, Polo and Donovan was kind of the exception, but he also just said, even if they get Polo, they would still be in on Donovan. So I guess that doesn't exclude the idea that they might be willing to do that for other players as well, because Polo and Lowe. I mean, turns out Polo's making a lot more money than Lowe this year, but yeah, I mean, I think that was the plan. Is that hey, we can afford both of these guys? Well, you can afford both of Lowe and Donovan. So yes, I think that should be the plan. Will it? I don't know. Probably a big chunk of this has to do with how cheap Lowe would be. Because we know Donovan's going to be somewhat costly, but not ridiculously so. So yeah, if you could get Lowe for Teddy McGraw or whatever, then yeah, I mean, you probably could do that. I think they should. Will they? I don't know. I don't have a good feel for that. But I've, long believed they needed two bats. And I was after Naylor, they needed two. And I thought, pretty good chance Polo would be one of those. And now the language that Jerry's been using pretty frequently is yeah, we want to add one more bat. And I hope they add one more bat part was in addition to bringing back Polanco, which we now know is not possible. So could they do it? Yes. Should they do it? Yes. Will they do it? I don't know. I don't have a great feel for that, but my hunch is probably not, but they should.
I think their preference would be more so to pair Donovan with a free agent, especially because they would only be paying $5.4 million to Donovan per his arbitration projection.
Find a free agent bat that puts up roughly Polo's, slash line that you can get for less than $15 million. Because Polo got 20.
How much do we think he's going to get? Especially if Gino is more so being looked at as a first base DH type rather than a third baseman,
which I think he would be. I think it was Jude or Divish said if they did bring back Gino,
that's how the Mariners would view him. He would just occasionally play third base.
Right, he would play some third base, but he would DH, play some first base as well. So the Mariners do seem very intent on if they do bring in this other bat, he has to be able to play other places, not just DH. So I think that eliminates the Marcell Ozuna idea, which should be eliminated for another reason entirely. But like if they're going to bring in that second DH bat, they want that guy to at least be able to play somewhere else somewhat regularly.
Yeah. At the very least, they have to be able to play some first base, and then you can kind of like flip flop them and Naylor in the DH spot. So like Yandy Diaz could still theoretically work, but yeah, I don't
Mark
like
Santos could work.
Like to me, like the idea that I brought up would be like Donovan and then taking a shot on Kazuma Akamoto.
Yeah.
Or if Gino's market gets to a point where he's making like $15-ish million.
Even then, probably like a 1 or 2 year deal at most that the Mariners would be willing to give. So,
yeah,
I mean, maybe they just take the offer they were going to give to Gino or to Polo, and they just go offer it to Gino. But we don't know what the final offer was. Apparently, it was extremely competitive.
Yeah.
Whatever
the problem is though, like, I don't think they value those two guys the same. So I don't think they would be willing to offer him the Polo contract.
I don't either. But, again, if you already had that money earmarked for a DH, primary DH who could also play some other spots in your infield, well, that's Gino. And paying Gino, $15 million a year isn't egregious, even coming off of the year that he came off of. Like that's fine. Yeah. You can live with that, especially on a 1 or 2 year deal. But yeah, I think they should be very willing. In fact, I think that should be the goal. The primary goal would be to do that. And I would sacrifice the quality of the second bullpen arm I brought in to make that happen. To me, that primary DH along with a Donovan type is the best thing the Mariners can realistically do to increase their odds to win the World Series this winter is Donovan plus the bat, plus another bat. I think that's going to be more impactful than Donovan and like Luke Weaver, which would still be fine. But like I'd prefer the bat to the arm.
Yeah, agreed. So to go back to your original question, JJ, should they do it? Yes. Will they do it? I have a hard time seeing it. Dumper wants to know, what type of deal for Donovan would you describe as an overpay? Is it anything that involves Sloan? What would you say the right price is? To me, the right price is like Durangelo Senja or Las Montes as the headliner. Mm-hmm. And then anything below that. So no Sloan, no Anderson, no Emerson, no Farmelo. Arroyo, I'd be willing to do.
Sure. Mm-hmm. It sounds to me, without any inside info on this front, that the Mariners will not trade Emerson, Sloan, Anderson, or even Farmelo this winter. I think those
for just
guys
about anybody.
Yeah, I think those guys are largely untouchable. Obviously, the very right player comes along, fine, whatever. But Donovan is a 3, maybe 4 win player at best. Like that's his ceiling. They're not going to give up, 6 years, 7 years of Anderson, 7 years of anybody they think is going to be an all-star. They're not going to give that up. Senja, then you go to the Senja, the Laz, the Arroyo, the Fellman, like that group. They'll give those guys up. That's just kind of my feel for it. I think they want to give up Durangelo. Like if they're going to trade anybody from that group, they would prefer to give up Durangelo. That's my hunch. I don't know that for sure, but I think it's one of those guys. And then if they want the other guy too, they're going to have to add something on their side, and that would probably be a bullpen arm. We've talked about Matt Swanson. You get him for 5 years. Riley O'Brien, you get him for 5 years. JoJo Romero, I guess, but makes less sense now that you have Ferrer. I think it's one of those two guys is the headliner. And then there's some more bulk behind it, but probably still quality bulk, not like, a bunch of Josh Cairns. I do think, I think Ben Williamson makes some sense here as kind of like a tertiary piece because they want to move on from Arenado. There you go. Boom. So again, I think if it is like a Laz and Senja, I think you're getting another piece. And I think it's probably a bullpen arm. Honestly, I still feel really good about the offer that we made in our offseason plan. I feel like that was aggressive. I feel like it was appropriately, like it was the most amount of risk I was willing to take on a deal. And keep in mind in that trade, we were also getting back Riley O'Brien. So yeah, I think anybody in your top, anybody from that big four that we mentioned, that's an overpay. I think any of your 4 homegrown starters, that's a drastic overpay. Again, for Donovan, straight up, that's an all-in overpay. If they want to start throwing around Herrera in a trade package too, then we can have conversations, because there's my DH, there's my second baseman. We can have a different conversation. But any idea that the Mariners are going to trade Bryce Miller for Donovan, like, it's just not going to happen, because the Cardinals don't have the Miller replacement that the Mariners would want.
Yeah.
So, yeah, any of the homegrown 4 starters, they're out. And any of the Mariners pretty much consensus top 4 prospects, top 5, top 4. Emerson, Farmelo, the 2 pitchers, top 4.
Yeah.
I would be shocked if they were traded this winter. And they're not going to be traded in a Donovan package straight up. Like the Cardinals are going to have to add to their package, and they don't want to do that, blah, blah, blah. So, it's anything more than somebody in the Senja, Arroyo, Laz camp, I think would be a slight overpay. And then obviously the amount of the overpay depends on which actual player would get traded.
All right, we will answer more of your questions in just a moment, but first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by Gametime. The World Cup is coming back to North America for the first time since 1994, and with 48 teams for the first time ever, it's going to be massive. But let's be honest, getting tickets is usually the hardest part. That's why the Gametime app is clutch, finally giving fans a real advantage when it comes to snagging seats. With Gametime, you can track price drops in real time, get alerts when great seats open, and buy tickets the moment they hit the app. It puts the power back in your hands and makes going to the World Cup realistic instead of impossible. Pull up the app, and the layout makes it so simple to scroll through matchups and compare seat views. Pick a game, tap a section, and have your tickets locked in within minutes. No confusion, no hunting for fine print. Prices include fees up front, which I love because there are no last second surprises at checkout. So take the guesswork out of buying World Cup tickets in every match, concert, or event with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB. That's LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, download the app, make an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB. That's LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go, Gametime. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, if you want to hear from me and Colby even more and help support the show, we have a Patreon. It's called Control the Zone, and on there we talk Mariners, Seahawks, all that good stuff. For more information, go to patreon.com/Control the Zone. Link in the description of this episode. Next question here on Mailbag Monday comes from Whose House, who wants to know, with all the rumors of Mariners after Lowe, Marte, Donovan, and JoJo Romero, if you could rank the trades in order you guys think most likely to happen and least likely to happen. Second part, you think St. Louis would trade us Donovan and JoJo in the same deal if they are asking for multiple top prospects. Yeah, I think that's kind of the idea, especially that what we're talking about towards the end of the last segment, that, you know, if the Cardinals threw in something else, then maybe you'd be more willing to part with X, right? So, Romero, pretty interesting. Like I said last week, you know, just because you already have 2 lefties in Spire and Ferrer doesn't mean that you couldn't add another lefty. It's totally fine to have 3 lefties in your bullpen. Yeah. They're all pretty good.
Yeah, with the cost of left-handed relief pitching being shown over the league, you might just flip JoJo in its separate deal to get a bat that you want.
Sure. Yeah.
Or maybe you make Gabe Spire available, because let me tell you, if Zerpa is worth what he got, Gabe Spire is worth a freaking mansion. So there you go.
Thank you for censoring yourself. Yeah. So
good.
Most likely to least likely. I think Donovan's at the top. I'd say Lau's second, Marte third. Pretty clearly, like pretty big space between him and Lowe too, or Lowe and him.
Yeah. Yeah. Donovan. Like, which one is most likely to be traded? Well, the reliever is always the most likely guy to be traded because he's the cheapest guy. But because of what we know about the Mariners and kind of where this whole thing is trending, Donovan has to be considered the most likely. Marte, conflicting reports on him. Heard this weekend that he was the Mariners' main target. everybody else says like, nope, they're just not going to pay that price. So we'll see. Again, Marte's market could be falling. We don't know. They've been asking for an insane amount. Like, I don't know. Apparently they got offered Pepio and they said no, which if you're looking for a starting pitcher, like that's pretty good return for Marte.
I have to imagine there's more to that than we know. Like, are the Rays really going to take on $93 million guaranteed over 5 years?
Sure.
Were they asking the Diamondbacks to eat some money on that?
Well, it just feels like if that was the deal, it would have been done. So it feels like there's like some pieces we don't know that.
There was also a report that they had Cam Schlittler offered to them for Gino Suarez.
Right.
And, we were like, well, why didn't they take that? Why isn't that deal just done?
Because it never existed, right?
So
like what probably happened is that the Diamondbacks went to them and were like, we want this guy, and they were like, we'll think about it, I guess.
Yeah, and also in general, have the Diamondbacks ever come down from an insane asking price on one of their players? Yeah, so
on two of them.
On two of them, yeah. So
in the same month, in the same week.
Yeah.
To the same
team. It's possible that they're, because again, I really do think this like 10-5 rates thing it's a real like stressor on them. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think they might start to loosen up here over the coming week.
They re-signed Merrill Kelly. So like, is it super important for them to get a starter who will be in their opening day rotation I don't
really get why that's so important to them.
I agree with you, but
you're trading one of the best players in baseball.
Like it's hard to do that and get better.
I get you still have Perdomo and Carroll, but you're not going to be that good next year if you trade Ketel Marte. I'm sorry.
I mean, probably not. Probably like a fringe 500 team. But anyway,
so why does it matter if the headliner pitcher that you get back in a deal is ready to roll by opening day or not? Why does that matter? If the Mariners were actually like, hey, we'll give you Ryan Sloan, are you really going to get hung up on? Well, but we want Bryce Miller because Bryce Miller could start for us right now. Like, come on.
Yeah. So yeah, ultimately, I still think Marte is unlikely. I just haven't buried it as much as other people have. Like there are people out there like 0% chance, and I'm just like 2-3% chance at least. Like, so yeah, I would say it's Donovan, Lowe, JoJo, Marte, but JoJo's mostly because A, he might be included in the Donovan trade, and also B, like he's a reliever. He's just not going to be that expensive. Although, again, look at what Zerpa just cost. So maybe Romero, honestly, again, if I were the Mariners and like I was getting Romero, I would try to flip him this winter. I would try to make it so Romero didn't throw a pitch for me. And in that regard, I think the Mariners would prefer a Riley O'Brien or a Matt Swanson over Romero, even though I'm sure that the Cardinals would prefer to trade Romero than either of those two guys.
But also, again, you can have 3 lefties in your bullpen.
Sure, absolutely.
It's totally fine.
I'm not saying that you just like if you can Romero for free, you're fine.
Plus you play in a division right now that has Jordan Alvarez, that has Corey Seager. For now. Yeah, Seager especially for now.
I don't care what Chris Young says. For now.
I really want to see what happens if the Red Sox trade for Corey Seager. That's like peak chaos to me.
Yeah.
Just of like the trickle down effect that would have on the rest of the market. Like
there's 2 things about us, guys. We are team brawl and we are team chaos.
Yeah.
And so there you go. But yeah, I think based on reading the tea leaves right now, Donovan, Lowe, technically JoJo, although I'm not sure why he's in this conversation, whatever. I guess because they said the Mariners liked him. There was a report that the Mariners liked him.
Yeah, there was a report that them and the Yankees, I think. Yeah.
I mean, I guess I'll trade Senja and Laz for Romero and Donovan, and then I'll just flip Romero to the Yankees for like Jazz Chisholm. That seems fair.
Sure,
again, based on what Zerpa just got, I'm just saying. Also, by the way, Jazz Chisholm, maybe a dark horse in that whole like second base thing. Because apparently that's not a non-zero chance type of thing. So, yeah. Anyways, I think that's the correct order.
All right. Next question here from D. Panky. Do you think one of the big factors in the price they were willing to pay Polo was the opportunity cost of paying him too much would have all but eliminated any chance of signing a quality free agent reliever? I don't know if it's necessarily because of the reliever, but I do think that the Mariners are like, we're not just Jorge Polanco away from having the offseason that we want to have. So I think that they had a certain point that they were willing to go with him that would still allow them to either, go trade for Brendan Donovan or go add that reliever or whatever, do something else, add Willi Castro, whatever, Right. And once it got past that point, they were just like, okay, and also like I said in my video that I posted on Twitter the other day, like $20 million a year, even though it's only for 2 years, it's risky specifically for a team like the Mariners who have self-imposed financial restrictions because Polo has to hit in order to be valuable. Yeah, and he's got, several lower body injuries in his past. I mean, he even dealt with them this past year while he was having a career year. And frankly, I don't buy that he's a perennial 130 WRC plus guy. I don't. No, he's probably going to be more of like a 115, 120 WRC plus guy. Is that worth $20 million a year to specifically the Seattle Mariners? Probably not. I mean, clearly it wasn't because they let him go. But
what's interesting is we did hear, on Saturday that like the Mariners made an offer that was described as extremely competitive.
Yeah.
And now I don't know that. I assume that's coming from the Mariners, but I don't know. The way it was written, it kind of made it sound like Polo's agent was like, no, the Mariners made a very good offer. It's just, the Mets.
There was a lot of info coming from Polo's side, and
so that kind of makes
Kramer article specifically. Yeah,
and keep in mind, like I don't
stuff about wanting to play near his dad and all that,
right? And that's understandable.
Yeah,
I don't 100% understand how the taxes work and all this, but I know New York has a high state income tax, and I know Washington doesn't have one, so there is a pretty decent chance that Polo might, if the offers were extremely close, Polo might have given up money actually, because of the tax situation, to play in New York to be closer to his dad. So like if the Mariners offered 18 and the Mets offered 20, that he might ultimately have lost money. I don't know because we don't know what the Mariners offer is. I'm not going to go through the tax code because obviously it depends. You played 3 games in, New York this week and then you play 3 in Seattle, those get taxed differently. So whatever, it's a headache. I don't care about it. I'm not going to learn about it. But yeah, it's possible he actually may have ended up giving some money back to go to New York. But at the end of the day, I think it is like, this is our price. This is the most we're willing to do because we still have other things we want to get done. And we just don't think that you're that guy. You're not the guy who's, we sign you and we're World Series favorites. They have other things they want to do. So I think your instinct there is correct. And it's just the Mets kind of came out of nowhere. My hunch is this came together really fast. And I think the Mariners, thought this was a possibility because they were already setting themselves up to pivot pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So I don't think, unlike, such a weird sentence to say, unlike in 2024 last winter, where they were caught completely off guard by not signing Carlos Santana, it feels like the Mariners have kind of like, no, we're not going to do that again. We're going to be prepared just in case.
Yeah.
And so that's a good sign. But I think you're mostly right. I think it is just like, hey, look, if we give you this, it means we can't do this. And we feel like we need to do these things to be where we want to be. So we're just not going to be able to match that offer. I have a feeling you're right.
All right, that is going to do it for our show. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Locked On Mariners podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. For Colby Patnode, I'm Titan Gonzalez. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at LO_Mariners. You can follow me at Titan Gonzalez and Colby at CPAT11. That's CPAT11. We're also on Blue Sky. You can follow me at TDG, Colby at MLB Colby, and the show at Locked On Mariners. You can also find us on Instagram at Locked On Mariners. Have yourself a beautiful baseball day, and we'll see you next time. Peace.